In the deepest waters of our planet's oceans lurks the deadliest shark ever. The oceanic whitetip. The oceanic is almost certainly responsible for thousands of human deaths, but scientists know almost nothing about this apex predator. Now, a team of researchers are launching a global expedition, venturing out into the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. These extreme sharks live on the edge of survival. Tiger sharks, bull sharks, the legendary great white. These are the most dangerous sharks on Earth. But none compares to a shark that most people have never heard of. The oceanic whitetip, a mysterious deep-water shark, and a menace to sailors and shipwrecks for centuries.
Oceanic whitetip sharks have probably killed more people on the planet than any other shark that we know. Everyone's seen Jaws, and there's a classic scene in Jaws where Quinn is describing the USS Indianapolis sinking during World War II. The sailors hitting the water, struggling at night to stay alive, and being eaten one by one by sharks. That was oceanic whitetip shark.
The horrifying true story of the USS Indianapolis took place on July 30th, 1945. After delivering the first atomic bomb to the island of Guam, the ship was attacked and sunk by a Japanese sub. Those lucky enough to survive the initial blast were plunged into a living hell to fight for their lives. Survivors described the distinctive long fins of the oceanic and men being picked off one by one. 900 sailors went into the water. 4 days later, only 317 remained. This was the worst shark attack in recorded history. But the USS Indianapolis is just one of thousands of ships sunk in the past 100 years alone. And the total number of lives claimed by oceanic whitetips can only be guessed. So what kind of shark is this? And why is so little known about them today? Dr. Michael Domeyer is known for his pioneering research on great whites. But now, he's turning his attention to these open ocean sharks.
Oceanic whitetip, it's their turn. They are one of the least understood, least studied, most ignored shark species on the planet.
Michael has come to Cat Island, home to one of the last known aggregations of oceanic whitetips in the world. His first goal is to get into the water with them, to observe their behaviors and find out how they earn their reputation as the deadliest ever. This remote island sits in a protected shark sanctuary. Tiger sharks, bull sharks, and great hammerheads are some of the many species that live and thrive here. With all those sharks around, Michael needs a dive partner to watch his back.
Michael! Barry. Dang, how'd you get here already?
Good to see you.
Yeah,
Quite early.
Oh,
It's been a great trip. Thank you so much for this. Look, I've said no to so many of your trips. It's finally a pleasure to say yes for once. Now, they are hard animals to find, and I must admit I was pretty apprehensive before coming here. These are potentially dangerous animals, and we need to respect that.
The oceanic has survived for millions of years in one of the most extreme environments on Earth, the vast abyssal ocean. To find them, Michael and Barry will have to venture into deep water.
So oceanic whitetip sharks are found around the world in tropical waters. In fact, at one time, they're thought to be one of the most abundant pelagic sharks in the world. In the pelagic realm, which is the deep blue ocean, far from shore, everything looks the same if you're at the surface. So for an animal to make a living in this really clear, non-productive water is a tough thing. It's like a desert. you have to go a long ways offshore to end up in this deep blue pelagic habitat. But there are some places in the world where they have very little continental shelf. They just drop right off. Cat Island in the Bahamas is one of them.
They reached their first dive location, known by locals as the Wall. This is the border between the pale waters of the continental shelf and the dark blue of the abyss. This is where the Oceanics live, and it's where Michael and Barry will go on their first exploratory dive. They make their way towards the edge of the wall, where the water depth abruptly drops from just 100 feet to over 1,000. Survivors of shipwrecks like the Indianapolis reported oceanic whitetips suddenly attacking out of nowhere, and then disappearing just as quickly back into the blue. But after more than an hour in the water, there is no sign of these deadly phantoms. The crew's been on the water for hours, and if they don't spot an oceanic soon, they might have to call it a day. They get word that local fishermen have spotted oceanics north of their current position. This requires the team to venture farther beyond the edge of the wall than they had planned. And even though this water is only a mile offshore, here it's over 2,000 feet deep. Ideal for an oceanic whitetip.
It's on, boys.
For Michael, the only way to understand the behaviors that made the oceanics so deadly in the past is to dive with them now. In the open water, Barry and Michael are completely exposed, and a shark can approach from any direction. Many divers say that the endless, featureless blue can be disorienting. But there's no mistaking the sight of an incoming oceanic. Like a large bird of prey, the oceanic uses its elongated pectoral fins to glide around Michael and Barry's position. These long, slow passes show how the oceanic moves in a way to conserve energy. It could be how they wait for shipwrecked mariners to tire before moving in. And if tales from survivors are true, where you see one oceanic, there are more just out of sight. With so many sharks in the water, the divers have to be on guard at all times. More oceanics arrive. Michael and Barry want to observe the sharks. But now, it seems the whitetips are studying them. The sharks growing bolder and pressing in, Michael's first experience with observing oceanics has brought him closer than he ever expected. In deep waters off the coast of Cat Island in the Bahamas, Marine biologist Michael Domeyer and Barry Bruce are surrounded by a group of oceanic whitetips. These are truly dangerous sharks, and the team struggles to keep track of all of them. Shipwreck survivors have reported whitetips waiting hours for just the right moment to bite. These patient exploratory passes are a distinctive behavior. They use their superior endurance to wait for their prey to lose focus or show weakness. The Oceanics circle the dive team, closer and closer. They keep moving with minimal effort, while Michael and his team grow more tired with every passing moment. This is when an investigatory bump could turn into a bite in the blink of an eye. After over an hour underwater and running low on air, the divers decide to surface.
Those sharks wanted to check me out big time. Their eye is so much different than a white shark eye. Their eye is much more cat-like. You can really see it moving around. It's like looking at me forward and it goes by, checking me out backwards. They're still here. I mean, we've been down there all day.
Sailors used to call oceanics sea dogs for their curious habit of following boats. True to their name, the oceanics remain close to the boat.
Tell you what, though, if my sailboat just sank, and I'm by myself, and that shark is going around and around and around me, and if you're in the water, and as you get weaker, you start going down, you start losing it, I would not be laughing about it right now.
I think that's the key to these sharks. If you were adrift for days and getting weak and dehydrated, I think that these sharks would capitalize on those opportunities, and I don't think that turns them into terroristic man-eaters. I think that's what they're designed to do. I think that's what their natural instincts are.
Those sharks, if they were to find you, they're going to be swimming around you, waiting for you to tire out, and then I'm sorry, but they're going to get you. Does that make the oceanic whitetip a criminal or a bad shark? No. They're just doing what they have to do to survive.
Besides seeing this deadly display of endurance, Michael makes one more important observation on this first dive.
Something driven home to me personally during this is, do not underestimate oceanic whitetip sharks. There were times where I felt like those sharks were probing me for a weakness, sort of like vultures circling.
Michael has a theory as to why the oceanics developed this inquisitive nature.
I think anything that they see that is out of the ordinary, they're going to come check it out. The oceanic whitetips, they live in a habitat that has very little food, so they have to be extremely good at taking advantage of whatever opportunity they find.
To test his theory, Michael and Barry have developed an experiment to see just how little it might take to attract an oceanic out in the open ocean.
Today's whole mission is to recreate like an artificial shipwreck scene. We're going to put some stuff in the water that's floating and just see if that alone is enough to bring an oceanic whitetip shark to come a circle.
Their first step is to collect the materials to create their shipwreck. Gulf Stream currents fuel strong Atlantic storms, but also bring an incredible amount of trash onto these pristine beaches.
Easy. Shake. Didn't take long to find some junk on this beach, did it?
With the material gathered for their mock shipwreck, the team heads back out on the water to test their theory. The wreck they've constructed will float on its own, hundreds of yards away from the boat.
1, 2, 3.
If the raft alone is enough to attract a white tip, it'll show that these sharks will investigate any strange object floating at sea.
We're not going to bait at all. We're just going to take it off over the wall and see if it does indeed attract oceanic white tips.
The raft floats out over the abyss. Now they wait to see what happens.
So, Barry, the last couple of days we've been baiting these sharks, and we've had really good success. Now, with no bait, what do you think?
Well, look, it could take a while for them to get here. I mean, we've just got a visual reference point, so they've really got to be in the area, and it's going to be interesting to see, without those other cues that we've been putting in the water, the bait, the sound of the boat, just how they respond.
Many of the sailors who survived the initial sinking of the USS Indianapolis clung to debris just like this, before facing off with oceanic sharks.
Oh, yeah, we got one. Oh, she's really checking it out now.
In the absence of beta lures of any other kind, this oceanic still takes a close interest in the floating debris.
So what we're seeing is kind of what I expected. The shark, it's doing these long and slow passes, and it's using that as a visual reference point.
The fact that oceanics will investigate anything out of the ordinary on the open sea is probably one of the reasons they appear so quickly when ships sink. Michael and Barry return to shore to prepare for the next stage of their white tip investigation.
Going to the Bahamas was a great introduction to oceanic white tips for me. Get in the water with them, experience what they're like. Going there was really a smart first step.
Now that they've seen firsthand how and why the oceanic is such a threat, they're heading to Hawaii to explore a second mystery. What happened to white tips in the Pacific? This shark was once one of the most numerous in the ocean, and now it's become extremely rare. But a recent attack caught on video shows that oceanics in the Pacific still have a bite.
Ow! Oh my God!
After completing their first goal of observing oceanics in the wild, marine biologists Michael Domeyer and Barry Bruce are going to Hawaii for the second part of their mission: to find a wild oceanic in the Pacific. A piece of video evidence shows them what they're up against.
Let's see what you got.
This video was shot in 2014 off Hawaii. A group of snorkelers film a pod of pilot whales, and an oceanic white tip suddenly appears nearby. The shark keeps its distance and then swims away. Suddenly it reappears and makes a much closer pass by the group, showing the same probing behavior Michael and Barry observed in the Bahamas. Thinking that the white tip is finally left, the group returns their attention to the pilot whales.
Ow! Oh, that is a real bite.
This attack happened fast. The white tip suddenly reappeared out of nowhere, went straight at one of the divers, and bit him. Things could have been much worse. The diver escaped with only minor lacerations.
Right in the shoulder. Man, that thing was fired up. It's amazing how he just came right in. That guy dove down. I'm guessing he wanted to take a picture, and it stimulated that shark to come. So it's hard to put ourselves in the mind of that shark and what the motivation was.
Look, I think there's a danger in overthinking this stuff, because you're right. You cannot be inside the minds of these animals, and that's an interesting encounter.
A little unsettling now that we're about to hop in the water with these things.
The video is a reminder that the oceanic's inclination to investigate anything unusual can quickly go bad for humans.
Here in Hawaii, these sharks could be far more aggressive. On the other hand, I really don't know. I've never been in the water with them here, because oceanic white tips are much harder to find here.
In the last 50 years, oceanics in the Pacific have become more and more rare. And Michael thinks he knows why.
The commercial fishing pressure has crushed their populations by 90%. They are in dire need of our help.
To protect what's left of the species, researchers need to know their migration and feeding patterns. So Michael wants to catch one and place a satellite tag on it so we can track its movements.
The most important thing is that we develop a methodology for reliably finding oceanic whitetips. But fishing for these oceanic whitetips is going to be hard.
Because of their current state of decline, Pacific oceanics rarely cross paths with humans anymore. But there are a few people in Hawaii who risk confrontations with these sharks every day. Like Bruce Ayau and Jeff Alberts, two blue water spear fishermen who travel miles offshore to hunt for large game fish.
When we're shooting fish at a buoy or in the blue water, once you hit it and it's injured, it's making these vibrations, blood is flowing, and it's just sprinting all over the sea. And so it's this big, shiny object throwing out a little bit of blood and vibration, and the sharks will come out of nowhere to see what's happening. They'll come in a heartbeat and check out what's going on.
Bruce and Jeff are taking Michael to one of their favorite fishing spots.
So off the coast of the Hawaiian Islands are fish attracting devices, FAD. You'll hear us refer to them as FADs. They're put in the water because they attract fish. All they are is a buoy at the surface and a length of chain and cable that goes all the way to the bottom.
These fish attracting devices form marine ecosystems around themselves. Bait fish are attracted from all around by the plants that take root on the FAD. This creates an oasis of life in the deserts of the open ocean. And sitting at the top of this food chain are predators like tuna, big game fish, and the oceanic whitetip.
So this is one of the ones you guys come to quite often.
Right.
When you come out here on your own, you're looking for
Onos and mahi-mahi, there's so much happening out here. But anytime, a wounded fish is out here, sharks come up out of nowhere.
You think that they hear the struggling fish, or they...
It's the vibrations of the fish. And once that fish starts fighting on the end of the line, it's like the dinner bell's ringing. The shark just comes in out of nowhere.
Right away. Like, it's instantaneous, actually.
It's probably that lateral line that they use that can detect vibrations.
The lateral line is one of the many sensory systems that all sharks have. It detects vibrations underwater, helping the oceanic to locate prey. Water displaced by movement travels through the lateral line canal, rushing by sensitive hairs, similar to those found in human inner ears, that send electrical impulses to the oceanic's brain. These signals are then interpreted so that the oceanic can zero in on the source of the underwater vibrations. And sometimes the source is on the end of a fisherman's spear.
So the sharks you encounter, the different species, which ones concern you the most?
Well, I would say the oceanic whitetip, actually. They're very aggressive. They're coming in for the fish and curiosity, but I actually think they'd, do a nip on us at no problem.
That's a big
very
fish,
aggressive.
too. Well, I mean, oceanic whitetip could probably get 400 pounds, right?
Oh, they get big out here.
Bruce and Jeff will use snorkels, not scuba, as it's quieter in the water. They'll be spearfishing in 6,000 feet of water. Over 3 times what Barry and Michael dove in off the coast of Cat Island in the Bahamas. Plan is to shoot a fish with a spear gun. That will ring the dinner bell, which might call in an oceanic whitetip. A school of yellowfin tuna. Conditions could be good to attract a whitetip. Jeff dives to take a shot. If he hits a fish, an oceanic could appear from any direction. Three miles off the coast of Kona, Hawaii, Shark expert Michael Domeyer is observing two divers spearfish in water over a mile deep. They believe that the sound of the spear gun and the thrashing fish will act like a dinner bell for oceanic whitetips. But instead of an oceanic, they've caught the attention of a rough-toothed dolphin. Rough-toothed dolphins compete with oceanics for food. These agile and athletic swimmers are skilled hunters who prey on the same fish as whitetips. More dolphins arrive. Because dolphins and sharks usually avoid each other's presence, it's unlikely any whitetips will swim in.
We're not able to attract any sharks fishing off the fads, but they're disappearing. You know, what used to be a common occurrence is now becoming quite rare.
This failure to find a whitetip highlights yet another reason modern-day seafarers rarely come into contact with oceanics anymore. There's just not that many left. It's another day. Michael and Barry set out once more to try and find an oceanic.
Strategy number 2 is to go look for pilot whales. Many times, the pilot whales are escorting oceanic whitetips. So if you can find the pilot whales, you can hop in the water, and you may very well find oceanic whitetips.
Assisting them with this new strategy is Darren Verbeck, a local diver who is an expert at finding pilot whales.
From what I have seen, the pilot whales grab squid. Sometimes they don't eat them. And so a lot of times the oceanics are with the whales to pick up the extra scraps.
Historically, oceanics may have followed ships for the same reason. Because passengers and crew would toss trash and food scraps overboard. When food is scarce, as it is in the open ocean, you take any opportunity to eat. This could explain why they appeared immediately after ships sank.
Well, this would be a good thing to look around.
To find out, Darren has brought Michael and Barry to an area that pilot whales are known to travel through.
This is a plastic pipe that was attached to shore, and it has broken off in big surf and then bounced out offshore. But we've been out here and we've had all kinds of stuff all over this thing.
Yeah, let's get in and take a look at it.
Okay. There's fish.
There's some bait fish right there, triggerfish. All right, Barry, I'm going to turn the boat over to you to keep us off this thing, and we're going to suit up and have a look.
Yeah.
If Michael can confirm that oceanics follow pilot whales, he'll finally have a reliable method for finding them in the Pacific. Michael and Darren freedive to stake the area out. But besides schools of small baitfish, the water seems empty. Barry continues to look out for whales from the surface as Darren and Michael venture away from the pipe.
I got whales. They're down here somewhere?
Yeah. I am.
Pilot whales are massive creatures. They grow to be over 20 feet long and can weigh up to 3 tons. To support their massive size, the whales hunt and feed all day long, leaving scraps in their wake. If the theory is correct, oceanic whitetips might be close behind. The pod of pilot whales passes, and everyone goes on alert. Based on the video evidence, oceanics in the Pacific could be more wild and dangerous than anywhere else on the planet. Far off the rocky coast of Hawaii, a team of shark researchers believe that where there are pilot whales, there are also Pacific oceanics. This is one of the rare Pacific oceanic whitetips that they've been looking for. When the USS Indianapolis sank and the crew went into the water, hundreds of these sharks, ranging in size from 6 to 13 feet long, came and took almost 600 sailors. Now that he's found his whitetip, Michael surfaces. He wants to catch it and attach a satellite tag to track its movements.
Oh, Barry, solved.
Yeah.
Pretty far down, maybe 40, 50 feet down. You definitely confirm it's an oceanic whitetip with these pilot whales. It's time to catch it and tag it.
The team tracks the whitetip visually, waiting for the perfect opportunity to catch it.
Right there, I just saw them. Just saw them. Right there. 150 yards. Right under the bird, right where that bird is, right there.
Got him.
There. We don't have to get way in front of him, just right in front of him.
Yeah, I didn't want to tell you about that.
It's time to switch modes, get the rod down, get the bait going, and let's catch it.
The oceanic spotted. The team prepares their catch and release protocol. They circle the area, hoping that the oceanic will take the bait. But with sunset quickly approaching, time is short.
Yeah, we've probably only got an hour and a half, Barry, before we're going to have to go back.
They troll through the water, dragging their bait behind the boat.
There he is. There we go. Oh, boy. That feels like some serious tension. Dang. We didn't get hooked up.
The oceanic gets away.
They took it right where the hook's not. You see the teeth marks here, here, and of course, he got his lunch. We hit it pretty hard. We had a shot, missed it.
Despite this oceanic getting away, Michael and Barry have still discovered a great deal about this mysterious predator and how it got its deadly reputation.
In the Bahamas, I've learned anything that they see that is out of the ordinary, they're going to come check it out. As a ship is going down, that's going to attract an oceanic whitetip. And when he's on the scene, he's going to be circling around, looking for anything that might be food and probing for weaknesses.
In Hawaii, their research uncovered another mystery about the oceanic.
With the pilot whales, the oceanic whitetips are always behind them. There's a strange relationship there.
The oceanic beat Michael and Barry at their own game and escaped. Still wild, still free.
They're a beautiful species, a species that's undoubtedly threatened in the world's oceans. We must find out more about them so we know how to help them further. We can't do that in a vacuum of knowledge.
The real journey here was to get these sharks on the radar. The more we learn about them, the more we can help the entire species that we really need to strive to protect.